Actually, going back, one of the key learnings is take time to think.
Yes.
Take time off. I feel like the longer I've been in this startup journey, the more I've actually appreciated time off. Because in the early days, I felt guilty about it. It's like, you're not working? What do you mean you're not working? You're slacking. You're falling behind.
Yeah.
Like, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like the longer we've been in this journey, the more time you have to think, you actually tend to connect a lot of the dots. It's almost like your brain has time to allocate time to, okay, now let's collect all the dots.
Yeah.
We're done firefighting. Let's
It's like
connect all the dots.
your brain is doing retros.
Exactly.
On autopilot, yeah.
Exactly. Which is typically what we do in dreams, but it's like you can actually allocate time to just think
and zoom out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Time to think is really important.
Welcome to Talking Design and Engineering by Makelab. Insights and advice from industry leaders driving innovation and shaping the future of people, processes, and technology in the world of physical products.
Hey everyone, my name is Christina Parla. I am the co-founder and CEO of Makelab. I am also the host of Talking Design and Engineering. Today we have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, founder friend and life friend. Join us today as we talk about Rich's journey in building Partsimony and going from mechanical engineer undergrad all the way to founder in the supply chain space. So welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
On a weekend too.
Yeah, I mean, I had to. And unless you might just delist me from your friend list.
No, never. So a lot of my guests have been people that I know. So I always like to go into how we met. And I think our story is pretty unique.
Yeah.
We went, 2017 we go back?
Yeah.
The start of both of our companies.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So Manny and I had just started Makelab and we acquired 3D Uniprint, right? And we walked the floor at Tech Day. And we saw a booth and we saw a 3D printed part. We stopped. I think we spoke to you. You mentioned one of our competitors.
I remember, but what I remember from you guys is both very charismatic and you had great business cards.
Oh,
you had
really?
it looked like it was a printed. Yeah, it was good. It's good.
We stopped using business cards.
Technology. That's how long we've known each other.
I know.
Technology has gone to QR codes now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It changes too much. But that's right when you guys started too, right?
Yeah.
Or were you guys a couple years in?
So what's interesting is, before, this was Tech Day New York. And so before that, we had done Partsimony part-time for 2 years. So we started in 2015. It was a part-time project. It was hey, I guess if you can go into the whole history of Partsimony. Yeah. But basically, senior college, I had a dream for a product. And it was basically based on a senior capstone design. So I went to Georgia Tech undergrad, mechanical engineering. And then I had a dream for this project. Built was in my dream and actually worked. So I wanted to build it as let's just build this, take it to life. And then quickly found out how hard it is to make hardware, right? Yes. Where it's it's very, very, it's very painful at times. And so my twin brother Roland, who's my co-founder, was we should solve this. Initially, we were gonna do a bunch of different things, but we started part-time for 2 years, hired a buddy software engineer from college to help build the initial MVP. Learned a lot of lessons. And then we met you guys right when we were applying to Techstars.
Okay. So kind of at the beginning of your journey.
Yeah, kind of in the beginning.
And then what's the funniest thing though is that we didn't speak for another 2 years.
I know.
Literally 2 years.
We were supposed to. You guys, it seemed like we hit it off. You're oh yeah, we should. Yeah, we're gonna reach out to you. Yeah.
And we never did.
Peace. So thank you.
Just call me out.
You just ghosted us. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
I don't remember that.
They ghost people. I'm kidding.
But we both attended New York Hardware.
Yeah.
I think at separate times. So we didn't run into each other until the hardware holiday party of
Oh,
2019.
man. That's how we knew the friendship was gonna last.
Yes. But what happened was we were both at points in the company where times were tough.
Oh yeah.
So we went to this party and hung out by the food bar because we were like, it's dinner.
Okay.
As most startups founders do.
For any founder watching this, pro tip. Go to where there's free food, okay?
Always.
Networking events, at that point in my life, maybe even now, I prioritize networking events based on free food. Just like, how much free food is there? Okay, it's good. Okay, probably gonna be pizza, some decent stuff. I'll be there.
I feel like I still do too. No matter like what happens, my mindset will always be like that.
And it turns out you guys actually sponsored the food.
We did.
I was like, you guys were balling more than we were. I was like, you guys had shrimp. I was like, most places it's like pizza.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
But you guys had like jumbo shrimp.
Yeah.
I was just like, man.
We sponsored the raw bar.
So thank you for dinner.
So that's another reason why I was hanging out. I was like, well, if we paid for this, then I'm going to eat it. And I remember we had spoken. It was you and I, right? Not me and Roland.
Yeah.
It was you and I. So we were talking at the raw bar by the food, and we were just kind of like, it was a long bar, and we were just kind of moving. We're like, oh, let me grab some more of this. Let me grab some more of this. And then it wasn't until like maybe 20 minutes in that we realized we had met each other 2 years ago. And we're like, oh shit! Oh my gosh, yes!
Like, wait a minute, what do you do? I was like, Makelab, I've heard of that before.
And then you said your previous name, which was Inventor.
Yeah.
Inventor.
Inventoprint.
Yeah. And so
like,
it all rung a bell, and I was like, oh my god!
Oh,
and then
man.
we lost touch again for like another year.
Yeah.
And then FG on Clubhouse.
Yep.
Is where we reconnected for a third time. So the world brought us. All four of us together.
It was just like,
3
these
times.
Guys are meant to meet.
And then after, it was just downhill from there.
Oh my gosh. No, it's real. It's real.
That was so funny. No, but yeah, we have a very, we consider you guys one of like our best friends, really, like in the inner circle.
Same here. Like in my iOS text message, is like a pinned.
Me too.
Yeah. I'll
show.
So basically, it's like I guess I can show the camera, but it's basically like you guys are right here.
Oh my god,
like
I literally
the only other people's family.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's real. It's very real. But yeah, so I think we have a crazy journey on how we met, and it's really cool that you're here. We're working together very closely.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
So I like to bring it all the way back on this podcast.
All
like,
right.
who are you as a person? So, like, you did undergrad mechanical engineering.
Yep.
What drew you to that world?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
I
have a weird story about like why I chose mechanical engineering. So I initially grew up in Nigeria for the first like 15 years of life. When I was about 7 years old, I watched this movie Flubber with Robin Williams, like a Disney movie, The Green Blob, whatever have you.
Yeah.
I watched it as a kid, and there's this like floating robot in the movie. I was like, I just want to be this guy. I just want to be like in a garage or in a basement somewhere, just tinkering and inventing things, right? And like that's what sparked the whole like mechanical engineering. Initially, I told my dad, I want to be an inventor. I want to go to college to be an inventor. It's like there's no such thing as inventor in college. It's like you have to pick like a specialty. And he was a civil engineer, and so it's like, okay, this is what mechanical engineers do. This is what like electrical engineers do. Software engineering was just coming out. This was like 1997 or something like that.
Oh my gosh,
So it's like software engineering was really not a thing. I was like, oh yeah, no, I want to do mechanical engineering. I want to build like robotics.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of like sparked my interest in like mechanical engineering.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And so then you went to Georgia.
Yeah. So my parents were fortunate. They won the green card lottery in 1999.
Wow.
Yeah. And
nice.
So came to the U.S. In 1999. But my dad had this rule where it's like, you're going to finish in this is like high school.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to finish high school in Nigeria because I want you to learn respect. It's a classic Nigerian dad.
Yeah.
But ended up actually moving when we were 15 to Georgia. So did like sophomore year, like of high school on up. So East Paulding High School. Shout out to Paulding County, Georgia. But yeah, so did high school and then college around like Georgia Tech.
Okay, very cool. And so how was the college experience of being an ME compared to what you thought it would be? I always like to ask this question.
Well, that was the college experience. Okay, so
was it what you thought it would be?
It was no. Okay, so here's the thing. So my college career was like I optimized the first 2 years of college for just like studying and maximizing my GPA. Mm-hmm. So I got a 4.0 in my freshman year. I was a nerd.
No big deal.
Okay, I'm proud of it. What's funny, Roland and I both went to college together. We're both roommates, like the whole nine. Yeah, I know. Twins. I know. He's my best bud. But so we did the same thing together. We had this rule freshman year where it's like no going out until Saturday night, and we only had one night. So literally Friday night, the librarians knew us because they would actually have to kick us out of the library. They're probably like, these guys have no life. Like, well, it's Friday night, you're a freshman and you're in the library studying calculus. What are you like? Yeah. And so we made up for it junior, senior year of college. We joined a fraternity. Quickly, thank God we had a high GPA going into that. I think that's when we like had the full college experience. Yeah. But the classes really were still painful. It was like, I remember like years after graduating, I still had like PTSD of like, you could show up for a test and it was like, wait, there's a test today? And it's like the words are like gibberish and it's like like math, you always have this like symbols and it's like this is a random symbol, you don't even know what it is. Yeah. It's like, I had just like a bunch of those.
My college experience was so different. I had no tests.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I had our history tests. It was art school, right? Design school is so different. So you just had crits all the time. So you had to constantly make models and then like do a whole presentation, and that was like your test.
Do you know what's interesting? So at Georgia Tech, the people who had it worse than engineers, which actually says a lot, were the people doing industrial design. Yeah. They literally like...
It was rough.
I had no life. They had no life.
No, we had no life.
They were always in studio.
Yes.
And it's always something.
Yes.
Like, I was just like, how are these guys working harder than us? But what's also so fascinating to me is like, I feel like to be a good designer, there's a level of taste. Yeah. Like as an engineer, it's like, it's hard, but it's like, if you know the formulas, if you know the concepts, you can do it. But I feel like with design, it's like, you can know all the concepts. Yeah. But if you don't have good taste, it doesn't really work out.
It's like you learn a lot of the tools, but ultimately it's up to your own like inspirations and your own. Yeah. It's very personal design. That's what you bring to the table, and you just kind of leverage all these tools of what you know.
So I know you're supposed to be interviewing me, but I'm actually genuinely curious. Like, sure. How do you actually cultivate good taste?
A lot of failure. You just keep trying, and that's why ID students spend so long in the studio, because like you're just experimenting nonstop with deadlines. So like that's the worst. If you ever run an engineering R&D process and you're like in the part where you're manufacturing and then you're still experimenting, that feeling of like, oh, there's all these change orders, that's design school.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's the best I can relate it.
So fail a lot.
Yeah.
That's the lesson. Fail.
Yeah.
A lot.
And then learn from it. Because like you'll have an idea, an aesthetic in your mind, and you'll try to make the model, and it might be a cardboard model, but usually they say the cardboard mock-up tells you a lot about like physics as well. So like if you have things that like touch at a point, obviously that's not going to work. But you don't have that common sense going into design school, right? Because you've never done this before. So you have to like fail, and then you're up another 4 hours trying to redesign.
I feel like a lot of people are just scared of failure. In general.
I think
philosophy.
It's a strength of ID people, I must say. I've noticed across the board in interviewing a lot of ID people on this podcast and just like doing the IDSA stuff, we don't get scared of failure, which might be a good or bad thing.
Hey, look, to be a founder, I feel like you need to embrace it.
Yeah. I feel like it contributes a lot.
You know what? Actually, I'm connecting the dots here. Maybe it's like some of the most successful founders have been designers, whether it's like Airbnb, like Apple, whatever. Like, there's always like a strong design like ethos. Yes. Maybe that's why.
It's very interesting because we're trained to look at things very holistically. It's not just color, materials, and finish. Like if you're like a proper trained industrial designer, you're thinking about usability, you're thinking about manufacturing and saving costs, you have to integrate all of this stuff into one design.
Interesting.
And the further you can get along before you pass it off to engineering, if that's how the company works, the more control you have over the direction. So it's in an industrial designer's best interest to learn more skills as like they progress through their careers, which is why they're always in a learning state.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just learned something. That's good.
I agree. And then NTOP is also founded by an industrial designer.
Really?
Yeah. I think it could be, there's your own hurdles. Like being a designer means you can be very picky as well. So I feel like, and sometimes you hold on to it too much. And so you have to kind of get past your own hurdles and think about things more holistically, not just the product, but the business as your product. If you can do that, like it's a really good background to be a founder.
That's really cool.
You know what I mean?
I want to now like do like a whole like mental map of like traits of a designer, traits of a founder, common threads. We should maybe just start a fund and just invest in like
ID founders.
Yeah, like they have grit.
They do.
They've been punched a lot already, right? Like they can take rejection.
We can.
Right? They can take failure.
Yeah.
What else is there? What else do you need?
I mean, that's like founder in a nutshell. So I mean, I would. I bet on IT people to be founders.
All right, next the next thing we're gonna do.
Yes, after both of our companies.
Yes, after we sell or IPO or something, or die.
Never die. Never die.
Because we have the ID backbone. You never say no.
Yeah. It's so true though. But if you have that, I mean, there is a lot of overlap with that attitude. It's all about that. And like being a founder and entrepreneur and being a CEO is all about the mindset at the end of the day. Yeah. It's like you can learn all these tools, right? But it's about how you apply them, how you view the world.
Did you see that clip that's gone viral of this the CEO of NVIDIA? And he was talking about like it's all about pain. Like he was like very like accomplished people. Like if you go to Stanford or whatever have you, right? You tend to have high expectations, right, for yourself, rightfully so, because like you worked your way into Stanford or these top institutions,
right?
But high expectations actually correlates with like you don't really have a high pain tolerance. So when things get tough, you're like, it's not worth my time. I'm not gonna mop the floors. Like it's like. Like, do you know where I'm from? Do you know like my like pedigree? Yeah. Versus like if you have low expectations and a high pain tolerance, you end up being successful because you just keep like going after it.
You just never give up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you should.
But that's the thing. It's like
it's so
I feel
true.
like we've been in our businesses for so long.
Yeah.
And I feel like we were in our businesses before it was sexy to be in our businesses.
Yes.
Like 3D printing had its wave, and then you guys were still doing it, and like it's now back up. It's like supply chain. I remember when we were doing supply chain, and they were like, people would tell us like, what is even supply? Like, what is supply chain? Yeah. Like Amazon delivers. It's like it's fine. It's not a problem. Yeah. So it's like it's very interesting.
It is. It is very interesting.
Yeah. No, I love it.
I love it. So tell us about Partsimony. So we went back. Now let's go present day, and then we'll go in the middle. So tell us about Partsimony.
So what we do at Partsimony, quite simply, is we help people turn their designs into manufactured products with less time, money, and frustration. What makes us unique is we leverage AI technologies to help people make design improvements. So like DFM, basically it's like a design for manufacturability for those watching, design for manufacturability and improvements. And then help people find the right suppliers, the right manufacturers, such as Makelab, to manufacture each individual component for them. And for companies like Makelab, we help them to scale their business. Yeah. Right. So because we can look at the design details, we can say, well, what is the maximum amount of your bill of materials? So like all the pieces of your product that can go to the supplier. Right. Yeah. And so we basically focus on like building a more intelligent network to strengthen relationships between the manufacturer and the actual designer as well.
Very cool. And so for those that don't know, because it was a bit of a learning journey for me, like where does supply chain fit on the whole calendar of product development from idea to launch? Like at what point does someone start to interact with your company?
Yeah. So I like to say like supply chain comes into place when it's time to make it. Okay. Right. So if you think about making it typically, or like delivering it to your customer, that's where your supply chain gets involved. So if you think about the roadmap it's like design, which is like you're validating all the designs. You might have different revisions, so like looking at form, fit, and function, and then you go into, okay, now let's make it, right? And so there are different ways of making things, where there's 3D printing, CNC machine fabrication, or you might have like electronic assemblies, like PCBA assemblers that you need to work with. That's when it starts going into the whole like supply chain realm, where it's like, okay, where should this part be made, right? Should be in Brooklyn, should be in California, who's the right supplier? They should be like making each individual part. And then once that's already made, where do we assemble this, right? Where do we ship this to? Do we ship this to a warehouse? Do we ship this to a storefront? Or do we ship it directly to the actual customer? So like supply chain is actually very, very broad. And so a lot of times people think of supply chain as like Amazon delivery.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, supply chain is fulfillment. It's like, yes, fulfillment is very hard, but it's also like the strategy of like, where do you make things? How do you make things?
Right.
Quality management. So it's very, very broad.
And also, that could all change based on your quantity. Like, if you're doing some field testing, you can easily use a company like Makelab to like do that. But then if you're doing tens of thousands of units, that's where we stop making sense. And you have
For
to
now.
redo
For now.
everything. For
You
now.
never know.
Yeah, you never know. It depends on the industry, which is a whole nother conversation. And like the ability to for this industry to have more standardization and repeatability. Anyway, I
can see you going to work mode.
Oh my God,
I can just see you like, let's different aspects. We should cut that.
But no. But like you can change your whole like list of vendors, and you can. There could be a lot of changes in how you design parts based on how your vendors change. So if you're going from additive to soft tooling, for example, there will be a change because you will have to mine for certain geometries for injection molding.
Exactly.
And then if you're, there's so many options. So your company helps manage all those different options.
And so our whole thesis, right, or our big thing that we focus on is how do we bridge the gap between that engineering design and manufacturing supply chain? Because to your point, there are multiple different things that would affect the overall end product, right? Based on how you're making things and also how you're designing things, right? And so from my personal experience, so I worked at GE for a number of years, started in the aviation industry, went into oil and gas, locomotive, renewable energy. So very, very like hard industry sectors.
Yes.
And one of the things that we always saw was like, there's always like a long feedback loop, right? Where it's like you design something, it goes into production. And because of my mechanical engineering background, I was in the shop floor as a process quality engineer, and I'm like, why we designed this part this way? It doesn't make any sense. And then the feedback goes back to the engineer, and then they redesign a new part. But like from that, months have passed. We spent like millions of dollars in that design already. So now we're in like Rev 2, and then we're going to go to Rev 3. So with Partsimony is we're figuring out how do we bridge that gap, reduce that feedback loop to where it's like, hey, we're using AI technologies to give learnings to the designer as they're designing their parts. And then giving the supply chain manager better insights on here's how to maximize your relationship with supplier A versus B versus C. And not just like using a spreadsheet or using gut feel or using just like historical records in your head, which tends to be what like people do today.
Yeah. It's really interesting because in a way you're like with the reduction of cycles, you're allowing more innovation.
Exactly.
Well, because I can see how a restricted and rigid supply chain means that you have to get your final designs in earlier.
Yeah.
So if there is like a really big flaw, it puts vendors in a position where it's like, do I say something? Yeah. Do I call this out or not? And so it's not good for anybody.
Yeah. And it was interesting. So like with hardware, there's always a cost of failure. Like we just talked about how like failure is something you need to embrace. You need to do more failing, right? But I feel like in hardware, because it's so costly, is like you almost shy away from that. It's like, no, we can't fail. So if it works enough, it's okay.
Yeah.
So you end up with these like average processes, right? That never really truly like break through because like it's too risky because there's a lot of like money involved.
I see. So so how does this relate to say the designer who's in the earlier stage of the process? Like is there any bridging of the gap in that sense?
Yeah, so for us it's about like helping them understand how do they design better for manufacturability.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, hey, if I want to CNC machine this part or if I want to 3D print this part, here are the problems you design for this manufacturing process. Right. And then for the strategist, for the supply chain manager, it's okay, now who are the suppliers in my network that can manufacture these components? So I'll give you an example. During the pandemic in 2020, which seems like it was like last year, but also like seems like it was far
like
away.
4 years ago.
Yeah,
but
it's insane.
I don't understand the years.
Yeah, I know.
always get them
There's
confused.
some documentary on the psychological aspect of 2020 should like be released, but basically in 2020 when people were struggling to manufacture ventilators, the U.S. government got involved. A lot of big OEM brands got involved, and it took them over 6 months, and you couldn't manufacture ventilators. What we did at Partsimony is basically work with a team out of MIT and New Lab, and also 10x Beta was a product development firm.
Nice.
And we helped them manufacture ventilators in 2.5 months.
Nice.
And the main thing is basically looking at, obviously working with the engineering team, how do you reduce the cycles, but also looking at where within a part of a ventilator, where are alternative things you can do to manufacture that part. And so we actually found, hey, you can actually 3D print things local in Brooklyn versus injection molding this part, or CNC machining this actual part, right? So that's basically like using a more like first principles approach to like saying, okay, well, I need to make X or this X product. What does it take to make X, right? I can do 3D printing, I can do CNC machining. Okay, well, based off of that, it affects different like design like choices or whatever have you.
Super interesting. That's a really interesting case study. I think in our whole friendship,
I never mentioned. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
We're too busy talking about other stuff.
We're too busy venting about VCs.
The joys of startup life.
So who out of an entire company, like what department or what role is like your user? Like who's the one clicking around and uploading parts and like making those decisions?
Yeah, so we basically have like two core users. So one of them being supply chain manager. So usually they're the ones that have been tasked with, hey, I have the design, now go figure out how to make this.
Right.
And make this at scale.
Right.
So we see a lot of like alignment with the current use case. The other ones are the new product introduction teams. So like typically the engineers or designers building new products, or depending on how large the manufacturer is, they have teams called like productivity teams, where it's their job to go through those cycles of learnings, say, okay, here's how we can improve the designs or the process to get productivity to increase our margins, right?
I didn't know that was a role.
So there's like a cost out team, right? So even when we worked with Stanley Black & Decker, we're working with actual cost out teams as well. So it's like basically looking at how do you improve your designs for manufacturability. And so so I'd say engineers on the productivity or new product design phase, and then supply chain managers when it comes to supply chain strategy.
Do you think that this makes me think, because there's so many different roles, and when I went to design school, I didn't even know supply chain manager was a thing. I wouldn't know like
it's an unsung hero job. It's like no one knows about them until
it's a tough job too.
Yeah, I know, it's stressful.
Their job is to negotiate and buy things.
Yeah. Their job is to keep the engine going.
That's
and
tough.
it's like no one really knows they exist until like, wait, where's my part?
Yes.
Yeah.
But do you think that in general, the whole process of launching a product, whether it's a consumer product or maybe a robot or a drone or some sort of very industrial part, do you think that the whole process is too siloed? Like the designers don't talk to the engineers and the engineers don't talk to the supply chain managers?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Haven't lived it personally. But what's funny is like, I don't think it's even intentional. So here's the thing, right? Where it's like, if you are a designer, right?
Yeah.
You're probably having team meetings on like, okay, here's our design reviews or whatever have you. And it's like, I'm not going to tie up a supply chain manager's time in my design review meeting. Because he or she are already fighting fires, right? Of like, hey, I need to get this like mitigated, the supply chain disruptions happening, blah, blah.
I see.
So it's like everyone wants to be collaborative, right? But the collaboration tends to happen like in specific points in the process where it's like, okay, now I finished the design, now supply chain team, go and make this for me or help me make this part. But by then it's like, you could have actually incorporated some of the learnings from the supply chain manager. But while that was happening is like, they were fighting a fire, they don't have the time or the bandwidth to be included in the design meeting. And if they were, it might even be disruptive to the designers. or the actual engineers.
Interesting. Huh. So what's because I feel like it might be destructive, but it might be good destruction.
So yes. So here's when like a lot of companies, for example, like the companies I've been involved with, they have like action workouts. So which is basically like company retreats, if you will, where it's like, okay, we're gonna pick a problem, and we're gonna fly everyone in and just like solve this big problem. So it could be a new product introduction or whatever have you. But the problem with that is like there's so much pre-work required, and then when you get someone in, it's like for a week, and it's like, okay, well, let's solve this problem for a week. But it's like really what it should be async. It should be like every day. It should be like every action is just like a constant feedback loop,
yeah.
Which is where with Partsimony, we believe AI could solve that,
yeah.
Right? Where it's like, hey, instead of tying up a human being's time with providing all this feedback or providing all these learnings, the AI can capture the learnings and then give it to the customer, to design teams and the supply chain managers whenever it's relevant for them. Yeah. But then they're super expert. They make the final call, and the AI learns from them over time.
I think that's an ingenious solution.
Thank you.
You're just kind of distilling what's needed and thinking, what does the supply chain manager need to know? Pass it to them. What do you think? Quick thoughts.
Exactly. Exactly.
Super quick. And so that's something you're building with Partsimony?
Exactly. That's awesome. Our whole thing is like we want to reduce the workload of the expert.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you don't have to like keep slugging away or having like phone calls. It's like, hey, make their life easier so they can actually build products faster.
That's very cool.
With less frustration.
Yeah. Because I can see how just like how an organization is structured, teams, communication. Yeah. The way people communicate, all of that really does get in the way when you're launching product.
Yeah, big time.
Because it's just, there's so much.
Big time.
So much. Very interesting. So going back a little bit, so after college you went to GE? Yeah. And you were there for how many years?
So I was at GE for about 5 years. Okay. So actually I took a slight detour. So senior college, one of our mutual friends, Roland and I, sat us down and was like, "You want to make money?" We're like, "Yeah, of course we want to make money, right? Yeah. Let's get this money." Yeah. And then he was like, "Hey, this thing called Wall Street and like investment banking, and if you're an engineer, you're really good at math anyway, so you can learn this Wall Street thing."
Just jump careers.
And so we just like binged like CNBC, like Wall Street Oasis, like everything. And so we got fortunate to where we actually, I interned on Wall Street at Barclays.
Together?
Yeah, so together but at different times. I know.
Oh, okay.
Classic twin fashion. We just, like, I was at Barclays, he was at Barclays afterwards. It was, it's a whole thing. That's right. But so during my internship, I was fortunate enough to get a full-time offer to go back. But like, prayed about it. It just didn't feel right because I was like, my dad growing up always had this saying where it's like, follow your passion and the money will come. Like, don't worry about the money. And there's also like a deep, like to get real deep over here, it's like, we're all gonna die. Yeah. Like we're all gonna die. Yeah. So it's like, what you do in life, right, should be something that you find meaningful. Right? It's like, yeah, you can make money, but like when you die, it's like, you're not gonna be like, oh yeah, I really made a lot of money. It's like, you're not really going to care. You're going to be care about like exactly like the people you met, who you worked with, like the problems you helped solve, the impact you made. And so just focus on that. So I turned down that offer and went into GE because I'd interned there like for almost a year at that point, on and off. Yeah. So I was very, very familiar with the whole like aerospace like division. And so I basically got accepted into their it's called OMLP, is basically the Operations Management Leadership Program. It's like they basically condense like 5 years worth of experience into 2 years. Wow. So you basically rotate as a process quality engineer, you rotate as a supply chain like manager, you rotate as a shop, like as a supervisor. So actually like on the shop floor, like supervising our whole team for production. And so they like really, and they give you an amazing training. So it's really great. So
I've been great experience.
Yeah, I've been like a second to third shift supervisor. I've been a process quality engineer. I'm Six Sigma certified. I've been a product manager. So for the LeapJet engine, I was one of the product managers over there. So flew out to a bunch of different places to help them set up their actual like production facilities. So it's like amazing experience that I honestly, like outside of GA, I don't think I could have even gotten that kind of experience in such a sort of short amount of time.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You know, all this time I've known you, I knew some of this, but like I didn't know all of this. We never talked about it.
We're too busy laughing.
Yeah, being the loudest ones in the restaurant.
We haven't got kicked out yet. So
not yet. The waiters, they love us. No, but that's so cool. I mean, the whole time you were just talking, I was thinking, what a great example of founder company fit.
Oh man.
Like seriously.
Yeah, we learned the hard way.
I mean, fail fast and forward experience that you were the customer.
Yep.
That's how you know these intricacies.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, so I was a customer on both sides. So it was really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, what's Six Sigma? This is something I learned like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
From
Okay.
you.
Yeah. So Six Sigma is basically just a quality assurance philosophy that basically states that for every million parts or opportunities you produce, you only have a defect of 3.4, which if you think about that, it's like insane. So think about only 3 or let's say 4 defects for every million parts, right? And so that's what's required for like aerospace.
Yeah.
Right, for like aviation. So I worked at GE Aerospace building jet engines. And so it's like, you want to fly and know that like, I'm safe, right? And so it's like, it was basically being in that environment, it was just like, they drilled it into you where it's like, even if a part fell down on the floor, they could actually just scrap it.
Yeah.
They may not physically show any damage, but it's like, hey, it fell on the floor, it's done.
Wow.
Right, so that's the level of quality where it's like, you can reach like Six Sigma. Basically, you use a lot of statistical data analysis. One of the biggest learnings for me from just Six Sigma is a lot of people try to improve like processes in manufacturing without understanding if the process itself is stable, right? So what I mean by that is like the process itself, for you to improve it, needs to be like predictable, right? So the data points, so there's like a high and a low like band, and the data needs to be within a specific band to be considered to be stable. If it's just like dot everywhere, it's like, let's make it stable first, and then you can start improving the manufacturing process.
Very interesting. I think the additive manufacturing industry could take a
for sure. I think you guys also do it intuitively, like being around the shop. I think there's a lot of like Six Sigma stuff that you guys do.
That we didn't know.
That you didn't even exactly just personal, just like just learning and just like.
It's a personal, obsession.
Giving the designer stuff, you just learn a lot, right? And just naturally like progress.
That's so true, because that's a lot of what we do. A lot of people come into Makelab and say, "Oh my God, your space is so clean compared to."
I was really impressed.
Really?
I was honestly thinking like it was going to be chaos,
a mess.
But you guys actually have a process. It's like really good.
We have it could be improved in a lot of ways, but I think
you're
given
going to
the
work
tools.
on it again. Okay.
I know. Founder Ray, shut the fuck up. Anyway, I will
it's
talk
good. It's
about
good.
it.
It's a good quality. It's good quality. It's good quality.
I'm like, don't get me started. That's so cool. So, what's funny about the Six Sigma is that it's different belts. Like like martial arts.
It's like karate. Yeah.
What belt are you?
Yeah. So I'm technically I'm a black belt.
You're a black belt?
No. But I didn't finish. So I was supposed to finish like a project.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. For green belt, you have to do like a project and you have to pass like an actual exam. Black belt, you have to pass an exam and then do a project. So while I was at GE, I did my green belt, so passed the exam, did my project, that was verified. Then for black belt, I passed the exam, but for the project, it was like so long that I like ended up like leaving before I had to finish it. So it's like I have the skill sets, but I just didn't finish the project.
Okay, so you're unofficially black belt.
Yeah, unofficial. Yeah.
And there's only one more above that. I did some research.
It's like master.
It's like master black belt.
Yeah. Like you're just.
Yeah, you just stand there and nothing can touch you. That's so cool.
That's basically at that point you're managing other black belts doing like productivity projects, like Six Sigma projects.
Interesting. And so the certification, like, what's it like?
It can get pretty intense. So at GE they mix, so they combine Lean and Six Sigma. So Lean is basically a manufacturing like methodology, all about like reducing waste. So it's like reducing waste in motion. So how do you make sure people don't go back and forth to complete one specific task or one manufacturing process? or how to reduce inventory, or like work WIP, so like work in process like inventory.
Yeah.
How to reduce it, how to reduce bottlenecks.
Yeah.
It's like how to reduce waste. So that's lean, right? And Six Sigma is all about how to reduce defects. So G was just like marry those two together. So you basically had to do projects that had to take into account lean and Six Sigma.
Wow.
So I had to get certified in lean and Six Sigma.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's again amazing experience, amazing kind of And so I think the hardest part for most folks is like the statistical data modeling, right? Understanding like when to use specific like statistical like tools. And so basically it's called DMAIC, right? So it's that's a process of like Six Sigma. So it's an acronym for like define, measure, analyze, improve, and then control. So you basically like D is for define. So you define the problem, like, and you be very, very specific. Hey, I want to reduce, let's say, the yield for a 3D print, like a 3D printer. But let's even go a step further. Like I want to maintain constant temperature of the actual build plate. It's like defining, right? And then measure. Okay, well, what is the build plate's heat over time across the sample size? And then measure it to be stable. Because if it's not stable, then it's like you have a bigger problem. How do you make it stable? And then we can improve it. And then you analyze. Okay, now let's analyze like root cause analysis. So there are multiple different like tools you can use statistically to analyze what is like a high P or like an actual P value for an actual like potential solution, or what might be causing an actual problem. So it could be like room temperature is affecting the build plate or whatever have you, right? And then you improve. Okay, so you improve it, and then you measure all the improvements. What is the actual impact of that improvement? Because it could be multiple different solutions.
Yeah.
And then the important part is control. So you basically set controls in place where it's like you can't do this again. So it's like you want to make sure you control it where it's like that problem doesn't come again, because you end up fighting the same fires. Well, in reality, what tends to happen is people go from define to improve, and that's it. They maybe they control, but they don't really observe how the control is changing over time, right? So it's like, a lot of times, a lot of people tend to come into this like firefighting, like just like constantly firefighting, and I've been guilty of it, because like I feel like when you have to ship product, it's like, look, I don't have time for the statistical modeling analysis. I need to ship a part today, right? And so it's almost like, again, going back to what we're saying, it's like, how do you have the infrastructure or the tools to help the expert to reduce their workload to where it's like the system itself is helping you identify like potential solutions, so you don't make the same mistakes over and over again. So you can actually focus on just like serving the actual customer or like completing the actual like goal.
This is so interesting. Like it's so interesting because you called out a lot of things, and like my design brain was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I've thought about that before, like, but I've never attempted to measure it. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because how do you can have the idea, but how do you have actual control unless you're measuring it with numbers?
Right.
You know.
But another one of the things was interesting is when measuring, people measure things, but sometimes they don't really look back at it. It's like we measure things, but it's like it's in this like database. Right. It's like we'll get to it later, whatever have you. One of the biggest kind of or it's like sometimes someone would measure in a production environment, but it's on paper. Like, having worked in a lot of like large OEM settings, you'd be surprised by how much a lot of data is on paper versus an actual system that is actually like traceable. Like you can trace the process in the system. When it comes to like, a specific measurement, it could be in a system, but it's not really tied to somewhere where like a productivity engineer can basically pull it down and do some analysis. It's like they have to go do a specific case study themselves.
Right.
And it's like they have to do all the measurements. Like I remember being on the shop floor with a stopwatch, watching him at it, literally, and then putting down on paper, and then translating that paper into an Excel spreadsheet and doing my analysis there.
Wow.
Right. So it's like, so again, it's like, how do you marry the physical to like the digital to do all the analysis to get the feedback and the insights over time.
Which is so invaluable. And I think that's the one, I mean, obviously there are manufacturing facilities that do a version of this. But it's not really accessible. Like, I'm sure a lot of shop floors have to just build their own.
Or a lot of people just throw bodies at this, right? So it's like, you know what, it's a very hard problem. it's hard to automate. Let's throw a bunch of human beings and then they'll figure it out.
Supervisors.
Which is what honestly people just tend to do today, where it's like you have departments of thousands of people who are all very much needed. Well, there's some parts of their job that can actually be improved upon to where the person, the human being, can focus on more strategic things. Like as a designer, let's focus on like the ethos of the design and the customer versus like spending so much time on how we design for manufacturability, blah, blah. It's like those kind of things should be like almost like automated to where it's like you as a designer is just like collaborating with a system to explore different potential like solutions.
Interesting. It's interesting you say this because I recently learned of a concept that because design is very much at the front end of the process or the early stages of the process, I learned this thing called design constraint files.
Nice.
Do you know about this?
No, tell me.
It's very interesting. So I, as a manufacturer, can put in my design constraints in a SolidWorks file and give that to clients. So real time, they're designing and they get the feedback of no, that's not manufacturable.
Nice.
No. And apparently, this is a somewhat common thing for manufacturers. I'm sure it's not easy to set up, otherwise it would be everywhere.
Yeah.
But it seems like that's somewhat in line with what you're describing as a potential solution.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the nerdy means like, what format is that in?
I know,
like,
me
yeah,
too.
I'm like, let's actually talk after this.
I want to look this up. I've been meaning to look it up because that's one of the questions we get, right? Like we see a lot of things, we check for feasibility, so it's like if we can just
that's awesome.
Introduce a recurring client to a design constraint file, it's like
that's perfect.
They get more use out of it. That's
perfect.
But yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, let me think about my next question. I got very into that.
Oh, you did. But I'm loving this. I'm loving the...
This is fun.
Yeah.
I like the flow. It's supposed to be conversational and depends on the guest. Some people are a little bit more interviewee, and then others are more like
question answer.
Conversational.
I mean, I can do that. I can just be like... I can't even try me out.
Okay. One thing we can go into next is... Well, I feel like I have a lot of entrepreneurial interest.
Yeah.
And so we can go into learnings and unlearnings, going from Emmy to founder.
Unlearnings.
I think that's such an interesting one.
Yeah.
All right, you have some thoughts.
Oh, man.
So, okay. So there's a lot of people, I think, that follow Makelab that have an interest in being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And maybe are a little afraid to take the next step. These are specialists, IG people, mechanical engineers, like very specialist career trainings that want to step into the founder role. You and I have both done that.
Yeah.
But I'm curious as your thoughts. We've both been around for a while. What are some key things you had to learn and then some things you had to unlearn?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So I think in our early days, one of the biggest mistakes, I'll give you a real world example. The first MVP we had, the very, very first, the one that we were building part-time, right? We built it based on like insights that we had, where it's like, I'm Six Sigma certified. I've worked in industry. I know both sides of blah, blah. We build it, we launch it. Guess how many people like were using it?
How many?
Like one.
Oh,
right?
no.
It's a donut. I'm gonna, like maybe the one we kind of coerced or whatever have you. But it's like,
the friend.
and we're just like, wait a minute, like we're the experts. We know this. And so I think one of the biggest things we had to unlearn is like always approach things with a childlike curiosity. Even if you know the subject and the thing like the back of your hand, like always approach it like, oh, tell me more. Tell me about your manufacturing process. Even though you might like, oh, I should do no. Your opinion does not matter.
Yeah.
Right? And so like one of the biggest learnings has been childlike curiosity. Right? Where it's like, and the other piece of it, this is just a random tangent, by the way, is just like managing time. Oh my gosh.
It's the hardest thing.
Oh my gosh. Managing time and triaging time based on like what's relevant for a goal.
Yeah.
I'm now such a huge fan of like 5-minute meetings. Oh my gosh. Like it kills me. I'm sorry. Like it kills me when someone puts like a 1 hour block on my calendar.
No.
If it's not like, if it could be like an email or like a 5-minute thing.
Yes.
I feel like back then, like way back when in my corporate days, we almost like attribute time to like progress. It's like we're spending this much time, so it's like, boom, we're gonna do this action workout, we're gonna do boom, 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 boom. But it's like, hey, could we have used another way of solving this? Like, because this has been email or a memo or whatever have you to solve this exact problem.
Yeah.
So time management. Some people are better. I had to learn to be better at like time management. And the other thing is like working with people, like finding and working with people.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think something that like Roland and I has been extremely fortunate with is having an amazing team.
I can attest
the
to
Partsimony team. Roland and I love you guys. Like seriously, it's
they're really good.
Amazing.
Like
amazing.
Having met them now,
amazing.
Like they're amazing.
Amazing.
You've got a really good team.
And the thing is like, the Partsimony team is so talented that they could work anywhere, literally.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think like, why are you working with us? You're so good. Like, why us?
Why us?
Why us? You're better than us, right? And so it's like, fundamentally, I think, one, we thank God for that. But I think what's interesting is like, as a founder, you have to be 100% for the people you work with.
Yes.
Right? Where it's like, there are people in our team that might want to do something next, and Roland and I want to support them wholeheartedly in doing that next thing, even though it might not be related to Partsimony.
Yeah.
Because like we want the individual to be successful.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised what you can accomplish by just being 100% for someone, even at the detriment of your own company.
Yeah.
And I feel like even that attracts more high caliber talent, where it's like, hey, this is my stepping stone to the next thing, and they're going to support me in the next thing.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think, just the people, and maybe the last thing is knowing how to make difficult decisions. We're very, very nice people, right? Like I feel we both have the struggle where it's like, oh man, just like another chance and another, no, just one more chance, just one more chance. Like you need to make it hard. So it's like, okay, like it's enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to part ways.
Right.
It's not working out. It's me. Or maybe it's actually you. But either way, it's not working out.
You.
Right.
Yeah.
And so making those hard decisions, I think, is very, very helpful.
Yeah, those are definitely uncomfortable but key learnings. I really resonate with being for your people. Like when people come on and we see like true potential, I'm like, how do I nurture this? Like even beyond the company. It's okay. I don't expect you to stay forever. It's kind of unrealistic.
Yeah.
But for as long as you're here, how can we be going in the same direction on the same highway, different lanes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how could I maybe get some road bumps out of the way for you?
And you know what's interesting about that is if let's say that the person crushes it in your job, like in the job that they're hired for.
Yeah.
Right. It just opens up more opportunities because like, oh, you're the person who did this for Makelab, or you're the person who did this for Part. Like it builds your reputation, your brand, or whatever have you, which is basically like chips you can cash in on.
Totally.
Right. Totally. And so it's like, and that's why I feel like sometimes some founders in the early days might get like sidetracked where it's like, I hate my job, it's too boring, I want to go on my own. It's like, cool, but if you crush it where you are, you could do your own thing much faster. Yeah. And even the people that you're working with can actually be your biggest supporters and biggest advocates.
You build network.
Right.
Yeah.
And even like even with Partsimony's journey, for some of the early customers, it's like, hey, contacts. Like, hey, we work together. I'm doing this thing. Awesome. Let's kind of work together.
So good.
And it's like, thank God we had a good relationship and a good like work kind of like brand towards like, oh, I'm willing to work with you guys because you do good work and you're good people. Yeah. Whereas I feel like if we're just like completely checked out the entire time, it's like, why the heck would I want to work with you? It's like, it was painful to work with you back then. Now it's painful now. It's like, so it's like, I think for people who want to be entrepreneurs, just crush it wherever you are today, and you'd be surprised by how many doors actually open.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's interesting. I agree with that, but I didn't take that route.
You were just like, screw this place, bye. Like
there was like a larger opportunity, and like just being young, having energy, like Manny being the super of our building, so kind of having like our home and costs covered, that I felt like I needed to just take it. But that was very unique to us.
But I will say, having been around you though, I think you have a great brand in the design space. Yeah. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like people, I mean, also Makelab is pretty nice.
Thank you.
So it's like, I feel like you actually take seriously like what you do.
Yeah, very. Sometimes too much. But yeah, I feel the pain.
Definitely too much. But it's like, it's a different time. It's like, therapy's later.
Yeah, we can do therapy.
You're definitely a
after
workaholic.
This. No, so are you.
Yeah.
So are
Yeah, I mean.
Takes one to know one. Game
fair.
knows game.
That's fair.
It's fair. I mean, you kind of have to be if you're going to be a founder in our space.
There's a level of obsession that's kind of required.
Yeah, especially if you're just one that likes to solve problems, which you and I both like.
Yeah.
It's hard to shush the problems.
You know, I was reading about this thing, or like, how do you turn your brain off? Also, like internal monologues.
Yeah.
Apparently, there are people who don't have internal monologues, but it's like I'm always constantly thinking.
Yeah, in the background.
Yeah,
about the bigger questions.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah,
and it's crazy because it's annoying. Sometimes I'll step away from the office and I won't have meetings, I won't have a to-do list, and that's when my internal monologues just really go off. And then I can't stop taking notes. All it takes is 1 hour out of the office in a different environment, and I all of a sudden solve all these issues. It's crazy.
Actually, going back, one of the key learnings is take time to think.
Yes.
Take time off. I feel like the longer I've been in this startup journey, the more I've actually appreciated time off. Because in the early days, I felt guilty about it. It's like, you're not working? What do you mean you're not working? You're slacking. You're falling behind.
Yeah.
Like, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like the longer I've been in this journey, the more time you have to think, you actually tend to connect a lot of the dots. It's almost like your brain has time to allocate time to, okay, now let's collect all the dots.
Yeah.
We're done firefighting, let's connect all the dots.
Your brain is doing retros.
Exactly.
On autopilot. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is typically what we do in dreams, but it's like you can actually allocate time to just think.
And zoom out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Time to think is really important.
It's super important. It's hard to get to that state of mind though, I think, if you're a natural problem solver, because there will always be a fire. But it took me a while to get to the point where I also appreciate kind of being away from the office, unless we're short-staffed and we have to fill in and stuff, then it becomes difficult because I'm physically needed here. But it did take me some time to really appreciate the silence and the focus and the non-distractions, and just kind of sitting with my iPad or a whiteboard and just drawing nonsense and then connecting it. Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Is needed.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, this was fun.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, one last question.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's next for Partsimony?
Ooh, okay. So what's next for Partsimony is we're really big on how do we reduce the workload for experts, and also how do we best serve manufacturers in the equation. I think we've done a good job of serving the designers and the supply chain managers in one of the equations, but now we want to focus on the manufacturers and how do we serve them best. And we're super excited to be working with Makelab.
Likewise.
Yeah. It's
long time coming.
Yeah, I know. It took 3 meetings just to I know we have a history of it takes us a long time to.
Yeah. Well, it's also we're friends, and so sometimes it's when we hang out for game night, for example.
It's not even work. Yeah.
We don't talk about work at all. There's no talk. There might be a little blurb here or there. It's oh, I'm so tired. Oh my God, I'm training somebody.
But we're too busy being in the computer on Mario Kart.
Yeah, as a team.
As a team. Exactly. Exactly.
Good job last night.
Good job.
Good job. Debbie really pulled through too.
Debbie pulled through.
So
Debbie's my wife. She definitely pulled through.
Yes. No, she was carrying us. She was carrying us. No, but yeah, I think the decision to work together was literally this aha moment.
Yeah.
After just so long, and it was oh my God, why didn't we think of this sooner?
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah.
But
sometimes. I'm super excited about it. So it's I think moving forward, we want to basically help both manufacturers work better with their customers and just have the workload reduced on both sides by leveraging AI technologies.
That's very.
So where it's it doesn't take away the human aspect of it; it just enhances it.
And I think honestly, this area is one of those that could be, it could use AI very, very well. There's just so many opportunities. And so I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to work together. I'm excited for what's next with Partsimony.
Yeah, I'm excited for Makelab. I love this.
I love this too. It's a cool vibe. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe to Talking Design and Engineering on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, or follow Makelab on social media for the latest in on-demand 3D printing services.